Please welcome cantorial soloist from Temple Israel of Memphis, Abby Strauss, and please rise for our national anthems.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Join with me. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Kol balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homia ufatei mizrach kadima hain letzion tzofia od lo avda tikvateinu hatikva bat shnot apayim li'otam chofshi be'artzeinu eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim li'otam chofshi be'artzeinu eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you to David Bierman on guitar. Thank you.
Please welcome Stephen P. Seiden, Chair, JCC Association.
We are thrilled to be able to kick off the Biennial with a Memphis musician. Abby is founder of Judaism Inside Out, a musical philosophy that engages the mind, the body, and the soul, and has been a participant at Song Leader Boot Camp, a program of our JCC of St. Louis. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited that you are all here with us today to culminate our centennial celebration that began a journey over 100 years ago. Many of you helped create these banners in Baltimore at the Biennial in 2016. They are the story of the JCC's movement, the past, the present, and our dreams and hopes for the future. I'm so proud that we have over 600 delegates strong joining us at the Biennial. Joining us are delegates from 80 JCCs who are board leaders, executive directors, and senior professional staff. We have 48 participants in our Esther Leah Ritz Emerging JCC Leaders Institute, who will spend the next few days fast-tracking their leadership skills. We have 12 professionals who work with teens in your J's who are completing the 10th cohort of the Merit Fellowship. The focus of the Biennial is on the future. These are the individuals who work with Gen Z, the kids that are out there hoping to change and improve our world. Merit Fellows, please stand and let's give them a hand and thank them for the guidance they give to our teens. Welcome. We have 5 graduate scholars who've either just finished or are completing their master's degrees. They've interned at JCCs, and I believe will all be looking for a job. Their photos are in the bios, and bios are in the awards book. Please stand so that we can see who you are. Congratulations. A note to JCC staff, if you have a job available at your J, they are qualified, so please connect with them, because I know they're looking for jobs. As you walk around the Biennial, take a moment to introduce yourself to one of our JWB Jewish chaplains or lay leaders. 7 Jewish lay leaders, men and women, who serve and lead Jewish military communities in the absence of a chaplain, spent this past Shabbat together, learning about ways to build and strengthen Shabbat programming for their communities. Several JWB chaplains served as mentors for this program. Due to the time differences around the globe and Shabbat observances, most of the 36 chaplains gathering here in Memphis are still en route. I thank them for their service and welcome them to Memphis and the Biennial and look forward to seeing them later this afternoon. I would also like to welcome our 13 overseas delegates who are joining us through JCC Global. In addition to our delegates from the United States and Canada, please welcome our friends from Israel, Portugal, Poland, Germany, Russia, and Mexico. It's a tremendous opportunity to be able to learn with and from Jews from around the world. Please use this event to connect with our friends. Please join, well, we've welcomed them already. And of course, we have our wonderful host community from the Memphis JCC who have brought us their southern hospitality and will share blues, brews, and barbecue with us, along with many new ideas at the Biennial. You've already seen and will continue to see their volunteers in blue t-shirts throughout the week. We are so grateful for you, for your hospitality. I want to personally thank them for all of their hard work. I would like to thank some of the people who made this event possible. It is my pleasure to acknowledge the Coca-Cola Company, the Redwoods Group, and the Israel Ministry of Tourism for their sponsorship of our centennial, which will culminate here in Memphis. And I would also like to thank the Jim Joseph Foundation, the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, the Coca-Cola Company, and the Israel Ministry of Tourism for their support of the 2018 JCC of North America Biennial. It is my honor to introduce Kara Bierman, who also happens to be from Memphis and will be your host for the Biennial. Kara and her committee have worked with JCC Association staff, led by Robin Balin, on the event for the past 2 years to develop what I know will be a wonderful program and that will unfold. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank both of them, their committee and JCC Association staff, for all of their hard work and making this event possible. It is now my pleasure to turn the podium over to Kara.
Shalom, y'all. Welcome to Memphis. We are thrilled that you have chosen to spend the next 3 days with us at the 2018 JCCs of North America Biennial. Whether this is your first biennial, your fifth, or even your 10th, the 2018 Biennial is sure to provide you with the skills, insights, and connections you need to lead your JCC into the future. The Biennial will provide opportunities for you to strengthen the bonds with your own delegation, as well as to network with professionals, leaders, family, and volunteers from across North America, Israel, and around the world. It is against this extraordinary backdrop that we have the theme of our Biennial, Strengthening the New Jewish Community. This theme has informed all of our plenaries, breakouts, and seminar sessions. We have worked very hard to create a program that is both relevant to the present and focused on the future. Every plenary has its own overarching theme and will be guided by professionals and experts who will inform and inspire us. Each plenary will be followed by breakout forums with session choices where you can drill down on the ideas presented. The 2018 Biennial is getting underway as the Jewish world ushers in the celebration of the State of Israel's 70th anniversary. Tomorrow morning's plenary will be dedicated to this celebration and will include 3 renowned authors whose recent works have cast a number of Israel's latest achievements in a remarkable light. Following the plenary, 7 unique breakout sessions will expose you to extraordinary sides of Israel that most of us have never imagined. Each and every one a model for bringing Israel to your JCC. Our other plenaries will highlight the challenge of navigating our evolving landscape, the ever-growing importance of building partnerships and collaborations, and our annual J-Talks, which will focus on pushing the boundaries of engagement and community building. We are sure you will have new inspiration, ideas, programs, and innovations to talk about and implement when you return home to your J. With all of this going on, we thought it valuable to set some goals. We have taken the liberty to make some suggestions and have created a cheat sheet that was on your seats when you sat down so you can make notes along the way. My heartfelt thanks to the entire Memphis Host Committee and the staff of the MJCC for rolling out the red carpet, planning a great host city event, and for providing an amazing group of volunteers who will be available throughout the biennial to assist you with anything Memphis. They have ensured that our biennial is filled with great music, warmth, and generosity. They can't wait to see you at Graceland tonight so you can experience Elvis, his impact on music and on the world. It will be an event that you will surely talk about for years to come. I need to take one more moment for a particularly important acknowledgement. The Memphis Jewish community is home to one of the foremost leaders of the entire JCC movement. He served as chairman of the board of JCC Association, as well as president of JCC Global, where he continues to be an active member on both boards. He has been a proud and prominent Jewish leadership voice across North America for more than a quarter of a century. Jerome Mikowski has been a pillar of dedication and devotion in the Memphis Jewish community. Here at home, he has been a staunch supporter of the JCC movement since he was a teenager growing up in Memphis. The JCC opened when he was 14 years old, and it quickly became his second home. Jerome served as both president of the MJCC and the Jewish Federation and Foundation, along with various other leadership roles in organizations throughout the Memphis community. His philanthropy and dedication extends well beyond the Jewish community in Memphis, and he is someone I have personally admired and been inspired by in my life as a lay leader. Ladies and gentlemen, our very own Jerome Mikowski. Jerome, please stand. On behalf of the Board of Directors for the MJCC, as well as the Memphis Jewish community at large, we thank you with gratitude for your lifetime of dedication and commitment to the Jewish community. May we continue to follow in your footsteps, along with the many past presidents of JCC Association and JCC Global, as well as lay leaders who you will share this distinguished honor with. My goal for the biennial is that we all continue to learn and be inspired by people like you over the next 3 days together, focused on how we can all strengthen the new Jewish community for 2018 and beyond. Over the course of the next few days, you will see some of us wearing Shalom Y'all buttons. These are the JCC Association Board of Directors and staff and the Memphis host community volunteers. We are all excited to share this biennial experience with you, and our goal is to ensure you have a wonderful and meaningful time. My sincere appreciation to my biennial committee and JCC Association staff for 2 years of hard work, dedication, and vision inspired by one goal: to re-envision the biennial and make this, the 2018 biennial, the best one yet. And now I would like you to meet Jenny Herman, the dynamic chair of the Memphis JCC Host Committee. Jenny is the vice chair and chair-elect for the Memphis Jewish Community Center Board of Directors. She has been completely hands-on and has worked tirelessly to make this an amazing experience for you all. Please welcome Jenny Herman.
Good morning. It is truly my pleasure to welcome you to Memphis for the 2018 biennial, and I would like to thank the JCC Association for giving us the honor of hosting you all. Though our 3 days together are just beginning, I already feel energized and inspired. Looking around this room, I see familiar faces, strangers who hopefully will soon become friends, and a myriad of volunteers and professionals who have one thing in common: our collective mission to engage Jews and Jewish communities on a global scale, our collective goal of strengthening and enhancing our respective Jewish communities while being part of a larger movement, and the work that we do to sustain Jewish communities and strengthen Jewish continuity. Though our communities are all different and each unique in its own way, none of us are left to figure it all out on our own. The amazing thing about the global JCC movement is that we learn from and with each other. We share resources and ideas, we develop best practices for use throughout the field, and we celebrate each other's accomplishments. That is what being a part of the JCC movement is all about, and that is what our time here in Memphis together is all about. I look forward to learning with and from you and celebrating in all that we have individually and collectively accomplished since our last gathering 2 years ago. Individually, our respective JCCs accomplish amazing things, and collectively, we have a lot to be proud of. Though our primary purpose for being here is this amazing conference, I do hope that each of you will take the time to enjoy our beautiful city as well. Although Memphis is certainly known for its barbecue, blues, Beale Street, and Elvis, we are also very proud of our warm Southern hospitality and close-knit Jewish community. On behalf of this close-knit community, I am excited to personally welcome y'all to our host community event tonight at Graceland, complete with kosher barbecue, the amazing Elvis Museum Complex, and tours of Graceland itself. I also hope that you will consider joining us tomorrow, late afternoon, as the MJCC is pleased to host a complimentary walking tour of downtown Memphis's Pinch District with famed historian Jimmy Ogle. We have also reserved the Blues Hall of Fame Museum from 5 to 7 tomorrow night, and it will be open exclusively for biennial attendees. In addition to all of that, we are also excited to give you a small taste of Memphis music each day here at the Convention Center, where we will be hosting entertainment at specified times. If you are looking for recommendations on other attractions, restaurants, or anything else Memphis-related, please don't hesitate to stop by our hospitality desk, located right next to the registration area. We will also be providing snacks each day at the hospitality desk, so if nothing else, please stop by for your daily treat. In addition, we have volunteers and staff throughout the Convention Center all wearing blue t-shirts that say Shalom Y'all on the back. Please feel free to ask any of our volunteers for help or assistance. Speaking of volunteers, I would like to thank all of the volunteers and staff from the Memphis Jewish Community Center who are not only going to be here over the next few days, but who have worked very hard over the past 18 months as we prepared to welcome you to our community for the 2018 Biennial Convention. Some of the greatest assets of our Jewish community are our committed volunteers and talented professionals. I am thrilled that you will get a little taste of what makes us so special during your time here. I am grateful to our CEO, Larry Skolnick, for his leadership and his staff who helped tremendously with this effort over the past 18 months. Our major sponsor, FedEx, has played a huge role in making this biennial possible for us to host, and we appreciate their generosity and partnership. Though there is not a specified time for everyone to visit the 24-acre campus that houses our 190,000 square foot JCC, it would be our pleasure to host any of you who would like to make your way to East Memphis for a tour. If this is something you're interested in doing during your time here in Memphis, please stop by the hospitality desk and we can certainly arrange that for you. I hope you all have a wonderful time as we learn together over the next few days, and I look forward to getting to know many of you. Enjoy this year's biennial in our amazing city. With that, there's only one thing left for me to say. Shalom, y'all.
I have to get to the right section. Thank you, Jenny, and to your entire team. The energy, effort, and inspiration you have all invested into this is simply incredible. Now, before I introduce our first keynote speaker, I would like to remind you of two very important things. First, I hope that you have all downloaded our Biennial app. It's really the best way to get updates and know what's happening next. There are instructions on how to download the app in the program book for those of you who have not done so already. Please add the sessions you will attend to your personal schedule so that you can also submit an evaluation of each session through the app. If you have any questions or need help with the app, please see Dina at the registration desk. Also, you must wear your biennial credentials to get into the sessions here at the Convention Center and the Sheraton Hotel. You must also have them to get into Graceland, the Blues Foundation Museum, and the National Civil Rights Museum. Given our heightened concerns for security, we will enforce this policy, so please make sure you have them with you. So now, put on your blue suede shoes and get ready for an awesome biennial. I am delighted to welcome to the podium Alana Newhouse. Alana is the editor-in-chief of Tablet Magazine, which she founded in 2009. A graduate of Barnard College and Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism, she is a regular contributor to the New York Times, among other publications. Please join us, Alana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. As a wife, a stepmother to a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, a mother to a 3-year-old who's a maniac, and the daughter who takes care of her 2 elderly parents and runs a daily magazine with a staff of 12 and freelancers numbering in the hundreds, I have to tell you, it's very nice for once not to be at home or the office or with any of those people. But as the stewards of legendary communal spaces, that feeling won't be a surprise to you. For generations, JCCs have served as the basis not just for the activities, but for the thoughts and feelings that weren't best done or had at home or at work. Those specific needs have been different in each different era, since what people need from liminal spaces shifts as the world around us, social life, economy, politics, even the environment, changes. And we are certainly going through another major shift right now, both in American life as well as Jewish institutional life, one driven in large part by technology. But things may not be moving exactly as you imagine they are. And since the success of communal institutions is often built on being able to see around the corner, to predict what people will need somewhere a bit down the road, I'd like to tell you what I see from my bird's eye view. My remarks naturally can't address many of the specific challenges that you all face at the grassroots levels, which of course is where nearly everything important actually happens. But I think that zooming out and showing you the larger context within which people are encountering your spaces might give you an unexpected and maybe even inspiring view of your work. At least I hope it will. In short, I am here as an emissary from the virtual world, not just from Tablet, but from the world of journalism. The people in charge of my industry believe the hype that the internet was soon going to be everything to everyone, that in fact this was inevitable. As a result, we broke a bunch of things we later found out not only was no one on the internet interested in replacing, but which by definition could never be replaced by the internet. Before you go breaking or abandoning too many pieces of your own furniture, I'd like to tell you about the history of Tablet and what it's taught me about what the internet can and cannot, can never do for people. Tablet was started in 2009. Most of the staffers were veterans of print journalism who had become tired of the constraints of newspapers and magazines, and who saw in the internet limitless vistas, the chance to play with new formats and new media, to tell stories in the number of words we thought they deserved, instead of in whatever excise box the grid of the printing press allowed. But most of all, we saw the possibility of a new audience, an audience unlike any that newspapers and magazines were used to, one unencumbered by a specific geographical boundary or socioeconomic profile or demographic marker. Instead, we thought we could attract anyone, anywhere, for whom our work resonated. From a Jewish perspective, this meant the creation of an American Jewish readership built on none of the things that previous communal spaces were built on. Not on specific religious Jewish identity or observance level, not on location, not on politics, not on age, not on education level. This had long been something of a dream for me. In fact, at the same time that I was starting Tablet, I was reporting and researching a story for the New York Times about the photographer Roman Vishniak, directly related to this idea. The piece was ostensibly about a discovery made by a young curator at the International Center for Photography named Maya Benton. And what she discovered were previously unseen pictures made by Vishniak as the machine of the Holocaust rolled through Europe. Vishniak had long been considered the official mortuary photographer of Eastern European Jewish life, and the portrait created by his work was one tailor-made first for sympathy and then for nostalgia. Almost uniformly poor and pious, his subjects created a vision of authenticity lost or murdered. It was a vision that became wildly influential, first in Vishniak's own best-selling books, and then as an inspiration for various expressions of the Eastern European Jewish story in American pop culture things you may have heard of, like Yentl and Fiddler on the Roof. Anybody heard? But the more complete archive that this young curator found revealed a very different picture of life in Eastern Europe. A layered, roiling, very diverse community, in large part because Jews were forced to live among other Jews for hundreds of years. They lived with co-religionists who were often sharply unlike one another, politically, religiously, culturally, and socioeconomically. These were not people who simply disagreed with each other. They loathed one another with a burning intensity that makes the worst Facebook thread look like kindergarten. The fights they had about religion and art and socialism and communism and Zionism and much else were brutal. But they also ultimately created a great many minds fluent in the role that ideas play in how the world could be made better or worse. It was this mechanism that struck me as potentially powerful, especially at a time when Jews, like all Americans, had begun to cluster themselves inside of smaller and less challenging intellectual and experiential bubbles. What we thought if we could build a space that would be, above all else, aggressively diverse, religiously, politically, culturally, socioeconomically. With that, we set out to build a small operation with the modest ambition to be a high-quality, if third read for some readers, an online site that through long profiles and a quirky podcast and some insightful takes on the headlines, enriched people's understanding of the news of the day. We wanted to attract Jews who were different from each other, definitively, impolitely, even offensively different, and get them to share a space. We wanted them to face each other, to cajole, to push, to shove each other into feeling and thinking something important. Jews cannot be forced to live among each other anymore, thank God. But it occurred to us that there might have been something accidentally valuable for Jews and Jewish ideas in that arrangement. And Tablet was designed as an experiment in figuring out whether we could replicate the benefits of that closeness without the constraints of oppression. We thought at best we'd have about 25,000 readers. What we didn't foresee was that the site's early years would coincide with the shuttering of untold numbers of both local Jewish and secular publications, eliminating valuable coverage of everything from culture to religion to real-world threats to Israel's democracy and to Jewish communities around the world. Into this vacuum, we started running articles that we felt no one else would or could. For example, in the summer of 2014, we published a 5-part series on anti-Semitism in France. It may be hard for you to transport yourself back in time, but as a reminder, 2014 was a year in which people were actually hotly debating whether anti-Semitism was or was not significantly reemerging in Europe. As I published these pieces, I received emails from readers, activists, even editors and reporters from other outlets, all telling me that we were sowing hysteria, conjuring a dark story out of motiveless street crimes and the kind of minor social prejudice that exists everywhere. At first, readers largely seemed to agree. When these stories first ran, they sank like stones. No one read them. If all I had been after was traffic or clicks, I never would have published them. 6 months later, terrorists attacked the offices of Charlie Hebdo and a kosher supermarket in Paris. Within an hour, we republished those stories, making available for readers heavily reported insight and analysis they could trust. They soon became some of the most read stories in Tablet's history. We also enabled people to see culture as a window, not just into their personal histories and lives, but into politics and global affairs. But we did it with fun. I wonder if you could see this. Okay. So, in this feature, we invited readers to consider which foods contain the deepest Jewish significance, the ones that, throughout the history of our people, however you date it, have been most profoundly inspired by the rhythms of the Jewish calendar and the contingencies of the Jewish experience. Instead of organizing the dishes chronologically or by originating region, or perhaps most absurdly by best to least best, we decided to present them as we believe they exist in reality, all on the same table. And no, that is not photoshopped. we sourced and photographed all 100 dishes together on one day. Finally, in the lead up to the election, we noticed, as did many others, that our readership was becoming, if not clearly divided, then certainly more fractious and less willing to talk to those who seemed different from them. As a way of addressing this, 3 Tablet staffers decided to start a podcast called Unorthodox. These 3 people, Stephanie Butnick, Liel Leibovitz, and Mark Oppenheimer, are different from each other in background and beliefs of all kinds. But they love each other, and maybe even more importantly, they like and admire each other. And so each week they get together to talk about the news of the day, modeling for others how to engage and enlighten and fight with respect and connection and humor. Within a year, Unorthodox became one of our most popular features, an hour-long conversation downloaded by more than 20,000 people each week. In 9 years, Tablet has earned 2 National Magazine Awards, now has a stable of Pulitzer Prize-winning writers and editors. Remember when I said I thought we'd have 25,000 readers? We now have about 1 million unique readers a month, enough that we've become known, in the words of New York Magazine, as a must-read for young, politically and culturally engaged Jews. Thank you. And not just Jews. During our first year, I took note of one particular commenter. There was something very unusual about him, something that made him stand out in the crowd of our readers. He was engaged and smart and polite. I thought about it for a while, and then it hit me. Of course, he's not Jewish. I emailed him on a lark, and I was right. And yet, he still managed to surprise me. I asked him what brought him to Tablet, and he had the most insightful answer, one that has since served, at least in my mind, as a sort of tagline for the site and its mission. As he explained to me, he had been married for a decade to a Jewish woman. They had kids, and he spent every Jewish holiday with her family, whom he loved. She never asked him to consider converting or even learn about the rituals or events he was experiencing and clearly enjoying. The most information he got were answers to his own shy questions about this or that detail. But, he wrote to me, I hate asking those questions. Her family is so loving and so well-meaning, but they can't help but speak to me like I'm a 4-year-old. Well, this is the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate. I had questions beyond the elementary, beyond the obvious. I wanted to understand the identity. Tablet lets me listen in on a Jewish conversation. It's helping me do what I always wanted, he told me, which is to become fluent in the Jewish idiom. In truth, I think this is what we do for Jews too. The fact is that people who make up the broader Jewish community, regardless of how they identify, have become not just diverse but disparate, distanced from each other in geography, but also background and culture and politics, language, everything. But you know what the problem is with openness? It's openness. Having no boundaries meant that we were accessible to all sorts of wonderful and hard-to-reach people, regardless of affiliation or knowledge base. But it also meant that we were accessible to people who didn't mean well, people both within our community and without, who took advantage of our porousness to smear the platform, to make it feel unfriendly, even dangerous to others. We didn't realize it, but by linking our content to the larger and unfettered worlds of social media, we were inadvertently making our own readers and writers vulnerable to, at best, misunderstanding and at worst, hate. Either way, it wasn't anyone's definition of community. In this piece, a writer for us explained how she, an African-American Jew, feels entirely comfortable in her real life, but has come to worry about how her children will be perceived online. Quote, a tight-knit Jewish community can provide acknowledgement and assurance, she writes, but her Jewish identity has frequently come into question with the advent of the internet. As it turns out, we weren't alone. In fact, everyone has started to have the same reservations. In this piece, in Vanity Fair, Nick Bilton, who writes on technology in Silicon Valley, recently bemoaned what had been wrought. Quote, will a future generation look back in 10, 20, or maybe 100 years from now and wonder mystifyingly why a generation of humans believed in these platforms, despite mounting evidence that they were tearing society apart, despite the obvious benefits and facilitations they provide. Indeed, some of the people who gave us these platforms are already beginning to wonder if this is the case. Last month, Bilton continues, I wrote a piece detailing how some early Facebook employees now feel about the monster they created. As one early Facebook employee told him, quote, I lay awake at night thinking about all the things we built in the early days and what we could have done to avoid the product being used in this way. After the piece was published, Bilton said he expected to receive angry emails and text messages from current or former Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram employees. Instead, he writes, my inbox was flooded with former and even current employees of these social networks who confided that they felt the same way. Some even mentioned they had abandoned the platforms themselves. The people who reached out ranged in pay grade from engineers to C-suite executives. Some venture capitalists who once funded the companies or their competitors have told me they no longer use them or do so sparingly. Mark Suster of Upfront Ventures wrote last month that he had deleted Facebook and Twitter from his phone. This is an amazing quote. Suster said, this has really had a massive improvement on every single day of my life in ways I can't describe unless you try it yourself. So what am I saying exactly? Am I predicting the end of the internet or even social media? Of course not. What I am arguing, though, is that the idea that the internet was going to be a replacement for everything has, for anyone with any skin or money in the game, long since passed. Though many won't admit it publicly yet, the people who actually understand how the internet works now also understand what it cannot do. The good news for all of you is that first among the things it can't do well is provide meaningful, by which I mean real, communal spaces. What, I hear you asking? What is Facebook if not one big phone book of possible communities to be a part of? Except alignment is not membership. The philosophy of the internet is the philosophy of clicks, of likes, of how many people will lift one finger, and one finger only, to tap something. As a result, it's both massively visible and also massively unsatisfying. What value ever came from simply lifting one finger? That minimal engagement actually produces nothing long term for either the person on the receiving end, but maybe even more crucially, for the ostensible giver. This is actually one of my favorite finds, and you might not be able to see it, but to me this represents the truth of the internet. How many of you have Fitbits or ever did have a Fitbit? Okay, so you'll enjoy this probably the most, but if anyone who knows what a Fitbit is, you'll get it at least. So this is a swinging cradle for your phone. It is designed to help the wearer cheat the 10,000 steps a day. But it's dark. This will qualify you for health insurance discounts, presumably while you relax and eat and drink more and have another cigarette. If this is not the meaning of the internet, I do not know what is. You manage to get the numbers you want without any of the actual benefit to your lived life. In an example that I think may relate more specifically to your collective challenges, I was recently approached by someone on the board of a storied Jewish synagogue in New York City. You know the kind, old, with a beautiful, entirely paid-for building in a prime location. The people who run the shul were flummoxed at their inability to bring young people into the congregation, and they asked me for my advice. As it turns out, I had just met with a group of students from a very nearby college. They had created an alternative Shabbat dinner club where each member made food and they all gathered together to eat and talk. It had become so popular that they were outgrowing the dorm space that they were using and were looking for somewhere bigger to host their events. I naively exclaimed to the synagogue person, I have a great idea. What have you got going on in the shul rec room on Friday nights? Nothing, she answered. Well, you should let this kid use it for their Shabbat club. The reaction was immediate. Oh, we could never do that. We'd have to hire security and keep the building open, and what about the mashgiach and insurance? And it's not that those problems aren't real. As someone in charge of keeping the lights on in an institution, I understand them instinctively, and I respect them. The problem here is one of attitude, of posture. The answer I was hoping for wasn't an immediate yes, or even a yes ever. But what if this person said, oh, that's an interesting idea, I wonder how we could do it? Instead, she closed her doors, literally, to the very group of people she claimed she wanted in her space. But that's not even the main takeaway. In fact, this woman is a rarity among Jewish professionals, particularly those of you at JCCs who I found to be some of the most open and willing to engage with the new. The fact to note here is that the kids were not asking to start a website or a Twitter feed or a Facebook group, or even for the money to fund their Shabbat program. They were asking for the thing you have. The problem, as I see it, is that you've become distant from the reality of your own advantages and feel increasingly insecure compared to other spaces, both real and virtual. This isn't your fault. Your challenges are real, and I know they often seem as though they are growing every day, regardless of how much time and attention and resources you throw at them. Those challenges are not made of pixels. They are not amorphous. They are the challenges of bricks and mortar, of bodies growing old and communities growing thin. I can't tell you how to bring people into your specific doors. No one who stands up here really can, and for good reason, because the challenge is different in Los Angeles than it is in Atlanta, than it is in Detroit. What I'm saying is that in a world that is increasingly virtual, what can and I believe will make you special again is your realness. The realness of actual walls with actual rooms in which people can make connections with other humans, of phone lines that reach non-robot voices, of the help and sustenance and humor and solace that only comes from other people, and of which we are being more and more deprived every day. It is that which we need now, and which more of us will come to know that we need in the coming years, the wonder and enchantment of the real. There is magic in your spaces and in your people. I see it more and more every day. I hope you can too, and I wish you so much luck for you, but also for the rest of us in manifesting it in the future. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium President and CEO of JCC Association, Doron Krakow.
As a longtime and devoted reader of Tablet, I'm honored to follow the amazing Alana Newhouse. Good morning. I need to clarify, I guess, Jerome, you're the one to ask. Memphian, is that the term? Is that an actual term? It is. So let me take a moment also to acknowledge two particular Memphians who have made this entire experience possible: our Continental Chair, Kara Bierman, and the Host Committee Chair, Jenny Herman. Thank you. I have to begin with a disclaimer. This is a big room for me. This is a big audience for me. When I understood that I was going to be speaking at this plenary session, I asked the team whether or not there would be teleprompters so that I could be sure not to be looking at my notes the whole time. And I was told, no, you don't need teleprompters. We have something better. You can't see it where you are, but down below me there's a big screen, and it's called a confidence monitor. And I thought that must be a great idea. And in my mind, I was imagining that I would be seeing somebody on the screen going, "You're doing great. Keep it up." That's not, I'm afraid, what I'm looking at there. So I'm going to do the best I can, notwithstanding the absence of confidence I'm getting from that screen. I recently celebrated my first anniversary as the president and CEO of JCC Association. That's a milestone I never imagined that I would celebrate. I've spent the last 25 years since leaving the private sector, where I began my career as a mainframe systems planner for IBM, very similar to the work I'm doing now, as you can imagine. To do work in Jewish education and in the Jewish communal world. I spent a chunk of my career as the national director of the Young Judea Youth Movement. I was honored to have been asked to head the Israel and Overseas Department for what was then known as United Jewish Communities, now JFNA, the central body for the Federation System. And I spent the last 10 years running the American Associates, the American Friends of Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. Each chapter of my career providing me with a chance to be engaged with people and to try to find ways to help people see the opportunities, the potential, the possibilities that come from doing wonderful work together. But throughout that period, I was troubled and bothered by the dynamics going on more broadly in the North American Jewish community, and they were working on me, looking at a community as mighty and extraordinary as ours, and witnessing a weakening fabric of Jewish communal life, a diminishing sense of responsibility for one another, and growing distance between the different segments of the North American Jewish community and between the North American Jewish community as a whole and the state of Israel. Though I've loved what I've done at each step of my career, I began to feel like if there was ever an opportunity for me to participate in something where we might be able to do something about those unfolding trends, it would be a hard opportunity to ignore. About 18 months or so ago, I got a phone call one day from a search firm with which I was familiar, asking me if I would be interested in becoming part of the search for the new president and CEO of JCC Association. And my first impulse was, no, I don't think so. I'm not a JCC guy. I look around this room, I've had a chance to get to know a lot of people. There are JCC people, and there are people like me who, I'm a member of my JCC, and my kids went to the preschool, but I'm not from the JCC world. And so I was prepared to take a pass. But another friend of mine said, don't give up the possibility without taking a closer look. And when I dug in, I was stunned by what I discovered. And here's what I mean. Every week, in some 200 JCCs and affiliated independent agencies across Canada and the United States, 1.5 million people walk through our doors. We employ 6,000 full-time skilled professional staff and nearly 32,000 part-time and seasonal staff. Every summer, we play host to 51,000 kids in our day camps, together with the 10,000 staff that bring those programs to life. A staff that includes 1,000 who come to our camps from around the world, and more than 450 of those from the state of Israel. We have 22,000 children and 4,000 teachers in our early childhood education programs. We have 19,000 campers and staff in our resident camps. We distribute more than $10 million each year in scholarship funds towards non-formal educational programs and initiatives, the most on the North American Jewish landscape after Birthright. Our teen engagement efforts include those aforementioned 10,000 day camp staff, 4,200 teens in resident camp programs, 3,000 athletes and artists through JCC Maccabi, and thousands more in youth group and after-school programs. Those 3,000 athletes and artists in JCC Maccabi leverage 14,000 more, including volunteers, host families, fans, and guests. Look around this room. The lay leaders assembled here are just a fraction of the more than 3,000 passionate and dedicated volunteer leaders who bring this movement to life. I could go on and on and on. Simply put, the scale and scope of our efforts are unrivaled. So I figured I'd better take the meeting. Steve Seiden, Ron Lebo, and the members of the search committee gave me the greatest honor of my career when they invited me to come aboard. The scope of our movement makes quite an impression, so does the breadth of what we do. And here's just a small taste of what we've experienced since our last biennial. The Harry and Elaine Shamus JCC on the Hudson became the first new JCC in Westchester County, New York in more than 40 years. And later this year, the Moises Safra Center will open on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The Rady JCC in Winnipeg, which is celebrating its centennial anniversary this year, opened its doors and embraced Yazidi refugee families fleeing civil war in Iraq and Syria. JCCs are driving remarkable efforts at inclusion, like the Tucson JCC's Birthright Israel Trips for Special Needs Adults, now in its 8th year, and DC's Edlovich JCC's Transformational Israel Program for adults with physical and learning disabilities. Their second such group will visit Israel in 2018. 14 JCCs and independent camps came together not long ago in New York for a Keshet leadership seminar devoted to enhancing our inclusion efforts with members of the LGBTQ communities. The brand new mikveh housed at the Middleman JCC in Portland, Oregon, has opened its doors to members of the Orthodox community in connection with weddings, conversions, and life cycle events. The Sidman Leventhal JCC in Boston is driving an outreach initiative focused on family engagement that has brought a growing number of programs like the extraordinary PJ Library to young families in neighborhoods and communities previously considered too far away from the J. While the Aaron Family JCC in Dallas created a JCC on wheels to bring its programs to growing numbers of people in an ever wider geographic circle across the community. J Cafe at the Levin JCC in Durham, North Carolina has become the center of gravity for a Jewish food festival that now reaches more than 2,000 community members. And at this very moment, the JCC of Greater Baltimore is playing host to more than 900 young athletes from 19 JCCs across the Northeast at the Junior Maccabi Games, a major pipeline for future JCC Maccabi athletes. Across the movement, regional staff gatherings during the past year have included the 170 professionals from 19 communities at the Katz JCC in Margate, New Jersey, more than 100 JCC and camp professionals from across the Southwest in Tucson, Arizona. Boca Raton was the site for the first such conference in Florida in more than a decade, bringing together 60 professionals from a dozen JCCs. And our Continental Professional Conference a year ago brought more than 500 of our colleagues together from across Canada and the United States. The Ashman Family JCC in Palo Alto enhanced its Zionism 3.0 framework to explore and enrich the relationship between diaspora Jewry and Israel in the 21st century. As part of the celebration of our own centennial, 22 JCCs across the continent took part in making music happen, and the power of music reverberated with members of all ages. This past fall, JCC Global gathered several hundred professionals and lay leaders from 53 JCCs across 15 countries and 5 continents to launch Amitim 2.0, a network of international partnerships around emerging programs at JCCs around the world. Major naming gifts were received to create the Marlene Meyerson JCC of the Upper West Side and the Bender JCC in Rockville, Maryland. When I visited the Aaron Family JCC not long ago, among the people I met was a woman considered the Pied Piper of their yoga programs. Not being a yoga aficionado myself, I found that interesting and intriguing, and she began to describe to me the things that they were doing. Among these new innovations she described was dog yoga. Dog yoga. I thought about that for a moment, and I said to myself, I actually think this might be good for my dog. He's not very flexible. He suffers from stress. That's actually true. But frankly, I didn't quite get it. And before I could say another word, she said, and you know, we also do goat yoga. I'm serious. I'm serious. And I was able to tell at that point as I approached my first year in the job that I still have a great deal to learn and to understand about the nature of our work. This has been a period of powerful developments in our camping community as well. A major branding agreement in Detroit through which the extraordinary reputation of the Tamarack camps now comes to Detroit JCC's day camp as the Tamarack name, which is synonymous with excellence, comes together with the unsurpassed facility and grounds of the Detroit JCC. 12 Trails Camp, which opened in 2016, heads towards its third and most successful summer yet as a collaboration of 3 New York area JCCs, the Washington Heights Y, the JCC on the Hudson in Tarrytown, and the Riverdale Y. This past summer, the staff at JCC Ranch Camp out of the Steinberg Loop JCC in Denver, having only just concluded its own 2017 season, responded to a devastating fire at nearby Camp Ramah in the Rockies by returning to camp and throwing open its facilities to hundreds of Ramah campers and staff, providing a home for those whose summer would otherwise have been cut short. And this has been an extraordinary year for the Sunrise Association. Born at the Friedberg JCC on Long Island in 2004 with a commitment to providing a summer camp experience for children with cancer and inspired by Paul Newman's hole-in-the-wall camps, Sunrise, which started with 96 kids that summer, now reaches more than 1,400 children in 8 campsites, both here and in Israel, all completely free of charge. 3,000 more children are touched by Sunrise through year-round programs at our campsites, JCCs, and in pediatric oncology units at major cancer centers across the Northeast. The dream that was Sunrise has already raised more than $50 million from its growing legions of supporters and friends. Our roots as the Jewish Welfare Board, JWB, remain a source of enormous pride as we bear responsibility for serving and supporting more than 10,000 Jewish servicemen and women in the U.S. Armed Forces. This past November, thanks to a generous donation from the Camrus family of New York, JCC Association through JWB dedicated a Sefer Torah aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, the flagship of the next generation of U.S. Navy nuclear aircraft carriers. And just 2 weeks ago, I was in Washington, D.C., together with Steve Seiden and Rabbi Irv Elson, the remarkable leader of JWB, to present the senior-most armed forces leaders in our great nation, along with members of the Senate and House Armed Services Committees, with our new Siddur, the only such Siddur endorsed by the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox movements. Among the most special aspects of these presentations was the small collection of Siddurim that Irv brought with him that JWB had created for soldiers in the prior wars of the last 100 years. And he handed the Marine Commandant, General Neller, a copy of the Siddur that was given to Jewish men fighting in World War I. And I happened to be standing next to the Marine Commandant when he was leafing through the pages and couldn't help but smile when I overheard him say, "This is so cool." The Marine Commandant. I smiled, laughed, he smacked me in the head, and that was the end of the meeting. As you've been hearing, there is much to celebrate since the Baltimore Biennial, but it hasn't all been good. In early 2017, over a period of roughly 90 days, as part of a wider campaign of terror waged against the North American Jewish community, 130 bone-chilling, blood-curdling threats were received at 88 JCCs in 36 states and 4 Canadian provinces. Our close coordination with local, state, and federal law enforcement brought us into the offices of then FBI Director James Comey and Attorney General Jeff Sessions as we turned over every stone in our efforts to assure the safety and security of our institutions during the course of the unfolding investigation. In communities across the continent, we linked arms with civic, religious, and organizational leaders of every stripe and style. We were inspired by their love and support. Though already steadfastly committed to safety and security, we emerged from this crisis stronger, safer, and more resolute than ever. I was back in D.C. not long ago for a remarkable ceremony. The work of one JCC executive in response to this crisis caught the attention of the local FBI agent in charge, who placed his name in nomination for the Federal Bureau of Investigation Director's Community Leadership Award. On April 20th, FBI Director Christopher Wray, at a ceremony at FBI headquarters and in the presence of family and friends, presented the award to 51 distinguished Americans from across the country. Among them, the president and CEO of the Harry and Rose Sampson JCC in Milwaukee, Mark Shapiro. This past year was also a year of an unprecedented number of natural disasters here at home. Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, and the ensuing floods caused untold physical carnage. Wildfires in Sonoma County, mudslides in Santa Barbara and Montecito. These events rocked our country and in too many cases devastated critical Jewish community infrastructure. And amidst a wider society increasingly trying to come to grips with its expanding insight into the all too frequent instances that gave rise to the Me Too movement, we have learned that the Jewish world and the JCC field are not immune. Some instances have already come to light. Others almost certainly will as well. We have been unequivocal in our public response. Such behavior cannot and will not be tolerated in any JCC association, camp, or institution. But saying it is one thing, and making it happen is quite another. On one point, there is absolute consensus. We have to do better, and so that's what we're going to do. Tomorrow, you'll hear more about a new continental effort in which we will play a substantial part, an effort determined to ensure that every JCC will be a safe, respectful, and equitable environment for staff, for members, for participants, for everyone that passes through its doors. It has been an incredibly meaningful and gratifying journey of discovery for me thus far. Ours is a most impressive movement, but let's not lose track of what's going on around us. A generation ago, most Jews had a number of points of contact with Jewish life, but recent years have seen declining synagogue membership outside the Orthodox community. Fewer and fewer people are contributing to Federation campaigns, notwithstanding the fact that many of those campaigns grow in terms of the amount of money that they're raising. And we've seen the fading of once venerable organizations like B'nai B'rith and Hadassah and others whose once vaunted numbers have become a thing of the past. New initiatives like Birthright and Moishe House and renewed organizations like Hillel and BBYO offer hope and promise. But if our community is going to grow stronger and more deeply rooted, they are going to need increasing access to our platform. This movement will have to rise to the occasion. For a growing number of younger North American Jews, the act of walking through the doors of the JCC may be the single most Jewish thing that they do. So what does that mean for us? We've always looked upon ourselves as a center. Now we need to become a Jewish town square. That means capitalizing on our platform to deepen and enrich the kinds of experiences and encounters available to the members of our communities. It means providing a home for innovative and imaginative Jewish programs and activities likely to appeal to an ever wider circle of constituents and constituencies. It means giving people more and more reasons not just to come, but to come back again and again. When we travel the world, we visit the town squares wherever we go. Some of them leave a mark on us. The sights, the sounds, the people we meet. There's something about some of these town squares that makes us want to return. Too many others make little or no impression at all. Most are barely memories. So what kind of a town square do we want to be? Our success as a movement will be defined by the success of each of your communities, of your JCCs. So as we begin our second century as JCC Association, what are our aspirations? First, we look forward to revising the nature of our financial relationship. Dues may flow into JCC Association, but increasingly the financial relationship has to flow two ways. This past fall provided a significant example. The Jim Joseph Foundation's $1.9 million grant in support of training of the next generation of senior leaders through the Sheva Center for Early Childhood Education has enabled us to provide a multi-year training program for 30 JCCs from across the field, each of whom will receive a benefit equivalent to a $50,000 grant in support of the evolution of their programs. We are determined to become a means and a medium for substantially larger investment in the work that you do to enable you to bring increasingly significant success to the members of your community. We aspire, secondly, to be an engine for research and development. In the most successful of companies, investment in R&D is often the greatest indicator of potential for growth. But R&D means trial and error. It means failing often more than we succeed, but it also means that we'll be better at finding and developing a powerful pipeline of new and evolving opportunities for our communities. JCC Association needs to bring major resources to bear in support and pursuit of those efforts in towns and communities across the continent. And third, to strengthen the fabric of Jewish community across North America. Over the next few days, you'll hear about several ways in which we intend to do just that in the near term. We're going to tell you about a new initiative dedicated to strengthening ties between Orthodox and non-Orthodox members of our community, utilizing our unique platform. You'll be part of a conversation regarding how we can capitalize on the modern state of Israel as an engine for building community, not a topic that divides it. You'll be introduced to a new strategy for assuring that we as a movement will be better prepared to respond to the next natural or man-made disaster that strikes our movement or the communities in which we operate. And you'll hear about how we make our entire movement a safe, respectful, and equitable one. I keep using the term movement, so what do I mean by that? A movement is defined by a collective effort to go from here to there. Nothing more complicated than that. It means we share a common vision about our collective future and a common understanding of our collective past. JCC Association looks forward to launching a strategic planning process, not for and about ourselves, but together with you, for and about our movement, about the North American Jewish community. The common vision that emerges from this process will provide a blueprint for our future. It will generate an inventory of investment opportunities for major philanthropy, and it will result in an understanding of what JCC Association must look like if we're going to play an effective role in helping to shepherd our movement from here to there. Sandy Carden, the president of the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Foundation, addressing our board of directors in Houston this past January and reflecting upon the state of the American and Canadian Jewish communities, told our leadership that JCCs need to be much more than a platform for Jewish programs. They have to become a stairway to ever greater levels of Jewish engagement. In his words, we're living in a golden age for North American Jewry, and it is our task to build upon the momentum that began in the second half of the 20th century to bring about an even brighter Jewish future. In conclusion, Sandy told our board, "This is your time." And so it is. 1.5 million people making a premeditated decision to walk through our doors every week. 1 million of them Jews representing every stripe and style of Jewish identity, the broadest and most comprehensive cross-section of our community encountered anywhere in the organized Jewish world, from infancy to old age, from ultra-Orthodox to completely secular, from hard progressive left to staunch conservative right, and utilizing every letter that we use in the alphabet to identify an aspect of our identity, comes walking through our doors, making us the single largest platform for Jewish engagement that exists in North America. And 500,000 friends and neighbors who come to us from outside the circle of the Jewish community, making purposeful and premeditated decisions to come to a Jewish place, to a JCC under the name of a prominent Jewish family that hangs over the door for some program, activity, or initiative. That 500,000 makes us the largest constituent platform for community relations with the rest of the North American community on the continent. We have unparalleled levels of access and unparalleled levels of success in the achievements of a diaspora Jewish community here in the greatest countries in the world. And we are the first generation to be born into a world that includes a sovereign state of Israel in more than 2,000 years. Who bears primary responsibility for the future of the North American Jewish community? And this is another question that has occupied a growing amount of my time. Is it the synagogue movements? Outside of Orthodoxy, they're circling the wagons. Is it the federations? Money is a means to a greater end, but it's not the end. Is it the major and mega foundations? They certainly have dollar signs that have turned our heads, and they employ some of the wisest and most dedicated people in the field, but they represent a tiny fraction of the strength and power of Jewish communal life. Maybe it's the academic institutions, the universities and academic programs, the think tanks. I don't think so. 1.5 million people every week, 52 weeks out of the year. Folks, I think it's on us. There's a familiar parable about rising floodwaters and a devout man who counted on God to save him. It'll ring familiar to you. As the water rose and friends and neighbors began to flee his community, and he chose to stay, he told them, "It's okay, God will look after me." And the waters began to rise. A rowboat appeared, and the people in the boat urged him to climb aboard and allow them to ferry him to safety. But he said, "No, God will provide." And he stayed where he was, and the water kept rising. He moved to the second floor of his home to stay ahead of the rising flood, and a raft appeared on the horizon. Seeing him there from the window of his home, the raft came close and beseeched him to come out, jump into the water, swim to the raft, and allow them to take him to a safe place. And he said, "No, God will provide." And the water kept rising. He climbed onto the roof, and before long a helicopter appeared, lowering a rope ladder to him, and through a megaphone somebody from the helicopter called upon him, asking him to grab hold so that he could be carried to safety. And he said, "No, God will provide." And the water kept rising, and he drowned. Appearing at the gates of heaven, he asked God, "Where were you?" And God responded to him, "I sent you a rowboat. I sent you a raft. I sent you a helicopter. The rest was up to you." So here we are. We hold the future of our community in our hands. We've been provided with extraordinary infrastructure. We have access to virtually unlimited resources. 1.5 million people pass through our doors every week. We're living in a golden age, and yet the levels of disinterest and diminishing ties to one another continue to rise. We can wait and have faith that someone or something else will come to our rescue, or we can use the gifts we've been given and take it upon ourselves to do the rest. My friends, it's up to us to answer the call. May we go from strength to strength. Thank you very much.